I'm Kara Myers. I'm chair of the commission. And if my fellow commissioners would please introduce themselves for purposes of roll call.
Kyle Wobser.
Doris Davis Fritsch.
David Stites.
Laura DiCaprio.
Thank you. This evening, we will start by reviewing
Laura
the minutes
DiCaprio.
of the May 2nd, 2024
Thank you.
meeting, and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by,
reviewing
Laura
minutes
DiCaprio.
of the May
discussion about
2nd,
the National Register
2024
Historic
meeting,
District.
and then
This
it'll be
evening, we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura
minutes
DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May
about
2nd,
the National Register
2024
Historic
meeting,
District.
and then
This
it'll be
evening, we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura
minutes
DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May 2nd,
about the National Register
2024
Historic
meeting,
District.
and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura
minutes
DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May
about
2nd,
the National Register
2024 meeting, and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura
minutes
DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May 2nd,
about the National Register
2024 meeting, and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura
minutes
DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May
about
2nd,
the National Register
2024 meeting, and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May
about
2nd,
the National Register
2024 meeting, and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura DiCaprio.
of the
discussion
May
about
2nd,
the National Register
2024 meeting, and then
This
it'll
evening,
be
we will
followed
start by
by
reviewing
Laura DiCaprio.
of the
discussion.
Okay. Anyone make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion with the change to the map.
Did you catch that? Any second?
I'll second that.
Thanks. Second by David. Vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. The motion passes. So on to new business. Just taking a look at the notes that are in front of me. So Jill, it looks like you kind of made a draft of, what's been happening, with Virginia and things. Would you like me? Never mind, I'm looking at the minutes. I'm like, what has Jill written?
But I can talk to you about that. I know, I thought, I don't remember writing anything,
like-
but that's okay.
There's so much. You gave me notes of what I can say tonight.
Virginia Bartos has since retired from SHPO, so we're very excited for her. She's starting her next adventure, and she's been incredibly helpful to the village. We are now working with Sarah Evenson, and David, I, and Kara had the pleasure of having a Zoom meeting with her on Monday afternoon to tell her about Fairport, to talk to her about what we're doing, what we'd like to do, and get her advice. We did not get the certified local government grant, which is okay. We scored high, but not high enough. This year they had an overwhelming number of people apply, which is great because that means more historic preservation is happening in the state, but it's bad for us because we didn't make the top tier. One of the comments from the reviewers was perhaps we should consider updating our 2014 survey. So we had a conversation with Sarah about that, as far as taking the steps to move forward with that. There was another reviewer that had expressed, I don't want to say concern, but interest as to why we hadn't expanded the proposed boundaries of the National Register District. And so Sarah is going to be catching up with Frances Stern, who is also a great advisor to us at SHPO, to get additional information from that reviewer to find out why did they think we should expand those boundaries. So we should be hearing back from Sarah soon. Sarah also is going to be in the area October 3rd and 4th, and so she is hopeful that she'll be able to visit with us. So we're hoping that perhaps we can schedule something with her so that a few of us or all of us, or however that may work, are able to show her Fairport and she can see all the great things that we have, and that will provide some sort of context for her as we're having additional conversations regarding the proposed National Register District, and maybe an updated survey in the coming years. Does that pretty much summarize our conversation?
It does. Yeah, no, that's great. And, I do hope that we can get together to go on a tour with her because I think that's important, kind of feet on the ground, walking the area and really having her just be able to see and feel the village. And I think our boundaries are pretty good. And Doris and I talked a little bit about this today. I mean, there was good reasoning behind that, but if there's some tweaking of that, I would love to hear.
Same, and I feel good
Yeah.
because we got the blessing from Virginia. And so Sarah mentioned that she was gonna go through all of Virginia's documents to just see how she got where we were. So I feel like we may not be changing those boundaries, but I just wanna make sure that the state understands what we're looking to do and that they're supportive so that we can move forward.
Sure.
I think as we go through some in-depth research, it'll be clearer. We may stumble on something that gives us, the impression or incentive to increase the district. But I think we've got a lot of research to do, and I think when we get deep into that, it'll be more clear in our minds whether we have the right area or we should expand it.
And one of the things I had referred to when we first started this was there is like a database system that SHPO is working with, and it's called CRIS, the Cultural Resource Information System. And it looks like it's going to be a really excellent tool. And also within CRIS, there's something called Trekker, where you can actually go in and you can store your research on the individual houses, and then it kind of downloads into the application. So there's some pretty sophisticated things going around, and that's why we need training too. So, I mean, I think that that'll be an excellent resource for us. Plus, it's public, and so we can go in, we can look at what other towns, villages, cities have done. So it's a really interesting resource just if you want to kind of go down that rabbit hole and look at what the rest of the state is doing. So the other thing that I did want to mention is that as far as the grants, Sarah is going to be, and maybe has already sent, no, she's busy this week, but she's going to send Jill some more information about different opportunities for grants, and she had a list of different, like the Preservation League of New York State, Landmark Society, there were some others, so she's going to be sending that. So, and I did want to say again, I might have said this at the last meeting, but we all thank you, Jill, for writing that grant. I know it takes time, a lot of thought, and we appreciate it. So,
Well, I'm disappointed because it's the first grant that I've ever written that I haven't received. So next time.
so I just wanted, Dave, do you want to say anything about our conversation? No? No? Okay. So I guess that was it. So as far as, I had sent out the request for volunteers, and I wanted to thank Doris. She's already created kind of a template for us to do our research or compile some of her research because she has a lot of that completed in that area. So a template for all of us if we kind of divvy up the different houses, moving forward with this. And Kyle offered to do some of the houses. I think Laura, you did as well. I'm sure Dave did too. Just the two of us assumed that we would be helping out. And Chuck said he would be happy to write some of the history, take some of what we'd already done and move forward with that. So, and Virginia has already entered it into the CRIS system. So it's already partially formatted in that. That was a little bit of a surprise when we were talking to Sarah, like it just popped up. So yeah. So, and as I've said, this is still a draft. And in the end, it also has to be approved by the village board. Well, I think that we
So,
would want to,
yes.
I'll let Jill answer that.
Once we formulate exactly where we're going with this and have a boundary, I think it's wise and prudent for us to present it to the village board so that they're aware of the actions that we're taking. Does the National Register itself need to be approved by the board no, because that's obviously by the state, but we want the support of the village board to proceed with this. There is going to be an element of public interaction and public meetings that we're going to be doing as we go through this process, but we're so early on. But it makes sense to explain the process because there are going to be questions, I'm sure, from village board members and also from the public as to what this means. We've had discussions before about most people, when they hear National Register, they assume that there are regulations that go along with it. In this case, as we've mentioned many times at meetings, National Register is very much the honor roll of historic properties, and people can access tax credits and make improvements to their home. There are no regulations per se, like a local designation has. And so it's an opportunity for us to meet with the public to continue to educate them as to the importance of historic preservation and what you guys do. So yes, at some point we will be having a presentation to the village board to explain to them what we like to do and how we're going to be moving forward.
Thank you, Jill. Would you like to share anything more about the National Register project? Anyone? Doris?
Kara and I talked a little bit about how to share information. When we did the 2014 survey, we did a Renaissance survey of this area as well as the rest of the village. And I happen to have done most of these streets that we are considering. So I have some basic information. I stumbled on some builders and things like that in this area and houses that, so-and-so built this house on Woodlawn, but he also built a house on West Avenue. So I want to be able to share that information. And we talked about possibly get some thumb drives for each of you who want to work on the research for the buildings themselves. And I gather whatever I have and just let you have it. It also would be a good way to turn that information back to Jill at the end of our process where you could load all your research, that additional research and notes, back onto that same floppy thumb drive, and then we'll have a complete record of all our work and all the background on all the research. So anyways, I think it's going to take me a bit of work to do that, but I have it on a hard drive, so it's a shame to have it just sit there and have you dig through the same stuff I've already dug through. And and on the survey itself, there's a brief little description, that sort of thing. There's little bits here and there. But, so I would like to get an idea as to who wants to do what streets. For instance, if someone wants to do Perrin and West, I'll work on gathering my information, getting it ready to share. So I think I don't care what streets I do, but I definitely, the only street I really didn't research back then was West Avenue. So anybody can take that who wants it. So, no, I want to start off in the easy ones. But anyways, I think that if we divide up our streets, even if you do 3 houses by next month, I think that we'll start to find the history that we need to share with each other, and with Chuck, who's going to summarize all that. You'll find, as I said, tidbits of information, and if we share some of that history information, or an architect that we find built such and such a house, or this builder did 5 houses in this general area, maybe we can figure out which 5 houses, even though I don't have them all, and share that information, because that's part of that's part of that history of that area where this gentleman bought and built and lived in all these 5 houses, that sort of thing. So that could be part of the overall write-up if we stumble on things like that. So anyways, I need some thumb drives.
If you, well, I guess one of the things that we could do, and we can sort out this, offline, but I could put files on OneDrive that people can access.
We can't all access that, and
Okay.
it's quite cumbersome.
Probably It might be, and I know we talked about the thumb drives, then we could probably put those thumb drives on OneDrive. Those who can access them can, because I think that probably the work that we do needs to be there. And maybe we can do another, maybe OneDrive has improved since last year. You know, maybe, I don't, can I ask who here was able to use OneDrive?
Mess around with it too much.
Yeah. So maybe we can check into that again, but I understand what you're saying for you, but maybe. Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Drag it over and hand it off.
Yep,
I mean, it's not that I'm gonna delete any of my information, I'll still have it, but
Yeah.
it would be the easiest thing for me to do. Because I had a lot of trouble with some, the drive. The previous one we were using, that is not a village drive, I thought was quite successful, but we're not allowed to use it, so we just have to find a different way. And again, once I got done with all my research, I could try downloading my stuff too, but I think for me to give the information to share, it'd be much easier for me to just pull it over to a thumb drive, hand it off.
well, thank you for doing that. So, any other thoughts on that? And then we can talk a little bit about when I think we would want to present this to the village board. And maybe after we meet with Sarah, so we have more questions answered.
I also think it might be nice to do, maybe pick a couple houses, have that information so we can present it to give the village board an idea of the neighborhood, what lies in the neighborhood, what are the exciting properties that are there. You know, we can talk about the number that have already received local designation within that neighborhood. So I think there's a lot of information that we can share with the village board as well as the public. And it's another one of those educational / marketing opportunities for Historic Preservation Commission.
And I'd like to do it as quickly as possible, because now we've been talking about it a little bit, so I don't want them to feel, like they didn't know something and someone comes up and talks about a proposed district and they're not familiar with it. So I think it would be good to get it in front of them as quickly as possible.
Could we do a really brief, just want to let you know, get your blessings, this is the area we're looking at, and not go into, because we don't have that research.
And I had previously mentioned it, and I can mention it again at a meeting and provide information to them to let them know that, this is what we're considering. We're working with SHPO, and that we will meet when we have a little bit more information.
Oh, and right, because you also, in doing the grant,
Correct.
the village knew about
Yep.
it. Okay,
Yep.
all right.
So generally, they know.
Yes, but we haven't provided an update in a little bit of time, so I think, I'll send out some communication saying, hey, historic preservation, this is still on the radar. We still are wanting to do this, even though we didn't get the grant. And we're working towards that. We'd like to come before the board sooner rather than later to discuss the neighborhood.
May. Preservation month. We have a lot of work to do before.
We do have a lot of work to do, and May isn't a bad idea, but if we can get it done sooner.
And answer questions if we're challenged with, the question, why not expand the area? Well, maybe by May of next year, we've got the winner to do some work.
Well,
We'll have that answer.
yeah,
And very confidently be able to explain it.
right, and so maybe, we shoot for, depending on where we're moving, maybe we discuss things with the village board in February or January with the idea that we would have the community meetings in May to celebrate Preservation Month, and we can sort of make that a bigger activity. But that's all, we're planning incredibly far in advance, so we can talk about that when we get there.
Maybe next month we can review our plans for the year. Push it out a month. So if we're done with that, we can get into the updates. I'm just going to mention this. Doris has been working on a few designations. We'd like to talk a little bit about the process, not right now at this meeting, but how do we bring them forward? Because we'd like to have the homeowners on board rather than them hearing, we're working on this property and they're listening to it and this is my home you're talking about. So talking about a process for that. And the other thing that I know we're doing, and then I'll let you guys take over if other projects have been worked on, but Laura has this great article that she wrote for 585, Living in a Landmark, with Raul and Heidi Martinez, the Spurbeck House. And so I'm just going to let you talk about that and how you're going to use it.
Yeah, I'm a freelance writer for 585 magazine, so I pitched this idea for an ongoing series highlighting old properties and old houses in the 585 area. So I started with Heidi's house because I know Heidi, and it was an easy in. So I mentioned, I talked a little bit about the history of the house, and then I also talked about, I have like one sentence in there about our group and how we helped with their, we gave them some advice on some of the windows and some of the things they're planning to do in the back. So I have a mention in there about that. So yeah, so I just sent that to Jill to be an easy newsletter for this month. And yeah, it was fun to write. Thanks. So for the November-December issue, Cornhill does an old house tour in for Christmas. Yep, and so I'm going to be talking about the tour, and I went and I interviewed two homeowners with two old properties in the Cornhill area. So, yeah, and then for the next one, for January, February, I'm going to be highlighting Andrew Boyd, I think his name was, but he was the first African-American architect in the Rochester area back in the 1930s and 40s, so I'm going to do a piece on him. So yeah, so if you have any ideas, I'm trying to get like all around 585 and some diversity in there just to make sure I cover as much as possible. Yeah, I'll try to put us in there. Like Doris says, this is a great house.
Could I ask that?
Here, hold on.
Could I ask that each of you who wants to work on the building list and those houses, tell Kara which streets you want to do or which group of houses you want to do, and so I can get started and bringing some of that research to together for you. So, if you let Kara know, then she can come back to you and say, no, so-and-so's got that, wants that street. So I don't care, other than I really would prefer not to do West Avenue, but I have a lot of information anyway, so.
And if you could just copy me in and let me know what everyone's doing, that'd be great too.
Yeah. So if you would all just kind of take a look at the map and drive around, see what you're interested in working on, let Kara know, and then I can, gather all my whatever information I can get together for you. And then I'll know what I need to work on. So I'm not doing anything yet.
How do you feel about it, Kyle?
Right now, I
Are
don't
there-
have a preference, but
Dave? Maybe we can just carve it up then. That might be easier. Okay. So
Do we have like fives, or is Chuck going to help too?
Chuck he offered to do more the history,
Okay.
the background, the general history of it, the why. And I think part of that is a lot of that's kind of done. It's halfway there. Yeah.
There's a lot of, because we have 10 or 11 National Register properties in the village, and some of them fit into this era that we're working on, so there's a lot there that, can be used and, edited for our purposes.
Could he do West Ave?
I keep forgetting to pass this.
Yeah. Like, could he do the research if that's what he's volunteering to do? That's what I'm
Okay,
saying. Is snooze, you lose.
I have to ask, why is there this fear about West Ave? What am I missing?
There's no background. Doris hasn't done a bunch.
You have no, okay.
It's a bare thumb drive.
But on the other hand, we have designated properties.
Yeah, so that could be Chuck's.
School.
Chuck knows the rule. If he's not here, he knows what's happening.
First time, the gentleman at the end of Roselawn was researching his property, so he's got an inventory form. We could, grab that and see where he's at with that. So no, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I still have information, it's just I haven't gone into in as much depth. But I think the more we do and the more we dig into the issue, the more substance Chuck will have for his write-up too, to make it more custom to the area we're working on. So just name your street.
So I had mentioned this before, but now as I'm listening to this, maybe next month we do put on our goals and projects and kind of update where we thought we'd be, where we are, where we'd like to be at this point. Yep. So is there anyone else that have any updates on the commission? Jill?
Nothing. I'm hopeful. I've subscribed to the APA has a training program called Passport, and what I'm doing right now is I'm going through all of their posted trainings to see if there's something that we could all do. So every land use board as one large group training. That's something that would be of interest to all of the land use boards. So I'm going through that right now because I think that's an easy way for us all to get together, to spend time together as board members, and have a learning opportunity. So I'm working on that, and that's pretty much it as far as the land use boards go.
And getting it on the record, you and Mark are keeping up with our outstanding projects that we have for the
Correct.
commission, and you'll keep us updated about that.
Yep. So Mark and I would argue, are a great team. That when a land use board, not just Historic Preservation Commission, makes a decision, and there are conditions attached to that decision, or a drawing has been submitted as part of that decision, that's a contract. And so when a board approves something, what is constructed has to meet that contract. And so Mark and I work to ensure that the permit documents that are submitted are the same as those that were reviewed by the land use boards, and then we ensure that that is exactly what it's constructed. So, just so you know how that process plays out, we take it very seriously.
All right, so if there's nothing else, oh sure.
I think we should try to explore how we're going to handle if we are going to designate individual properties. I think we need to talk about how we're going to do it, and that the concern is that, for instance, if I bring up a property that the owner hasn't been spoken to about, that they may be concerned, and the problem with not bringing it up in a public meeting is that we need to share the information about properties to make a decision on whether we even want that property, if we ever even want to work on that property. So it's sort of a conundrum. Is that the word? Not a good vocabulary. But we in the past weren't quite as public, but we went through a list and had a short, went through a list and said, hey, these are the most important ones. And we called, well, it was years ago, it's a short list. That was prior to the survey that really did outline the most important properties to work on. So, I mean, that survey's been out there forever. Maybe we should publish the list of what needs to be worked on. And so everybody has, how can I say, is notified at the same time that they're on the list.
I think the most appropriate way to do it is, there are a number of properties within the village that we would like to see locally designated. And so I think that if there are properties that the Historic Preservation Commission says, we'd like to have conversations with this property owner, I think that should be done before we're making public any addresses. There could be some folks that maybe now isn't the right time, and maybe in the future they'd like to. But I think we can broach those conversations. I did have a property owner reach out to me and express strong interest in having their property designated, and so that's an easy one. I think, for the Preservation Commission. And so we should have some discussions with folks and see where they're at in terms of historic preservation of their property and explain to them the process. I think a lot of people are excited by what the Historic Preservation Commission is doing and the way that you work with property owners and applicants to get the best product for their property. And I think that a lot of people will be very much interested once they hear the details of how the Preservation Commission operates.
But how do we discuss the property and even determine whether we want to talk to the property owner? And we have to do it at a public meeting.
I
So-
think that, but any property that is on the survey that has been acknowledged as one of those important properties, I think you can have conversations with any property owner.
Right. But some of them, it's been 10 years, some of them have changed, and I'm
Well,
not,
and that's why we have the contact information for those property owners, and I can get that, and we can reach out and meet with them and have a conversation.
I think what Doris is saying is if the commission is not necessarily on board, it's a chicken and egg kind of thing.
Yep.
You know, you don't want to reach out to someone and say, we're considering this, and then you bring it back to the commission, they're like, oh, no, not that one. You know, so I think that's what Doris is alluding to, or stating.
Do we want to come up with our list and then do, I don't know why I'm saying this out loud, maybe like an open house kind of thing where we come up with our list, invite those homeowners to a presentation or a conversation and talk about the process and talk about what it means. It's almost applying a little bit of peer pressure in the sense that if there are some people who are very much on board, and then there's some people in the audience who are maybe a little bit hesitant, we could perhaps persuade them. I say perhaps persuade because, I mean, if someone is against it, personally, I have a hard time pushing the issue. If someone is against it, I'll just go on record as saying that. I don't want to force someone to have to do everything associated with it, but getting everyone in a room and talking about it as a group might work.
but who do we invite?
Well, what
We need to decide who,
decide as a
right,
group
but we
what
have,
is proper.
and we have to discuss that publicly, so we're right back where we started. I'm sorry.
Kyle and Laura, did you have anything that you wanted to, any thoughts about how to make this work?
I don't see an issue of just having a discussion about which ones we want because we're not landing on any decisions or anything. So I think a public discussion, and that's part of our job here, is to discuss all the properties in Fairport, no matter if we've talked to the homeowners or not. So I think I don't see an issue at all about just having a public discussion with each other and, you know, whoever's watching about which ones we want to move forward with or explore. I think it's fine.
I mean, these are all found in the survey anyhow, correct? So it's all, there's some level already of your house is something that we think is very special. And now we're taking that conversation a step further. And
Then
then,
at that point, once everyone has kind of agreed, well, these 5 houses we can, you know, think about, move forward, then you let the owners know.
How many high priority houses are there on that survey?
There were about 38, wait a minute, no, I'm sorry. There are, I have to have it in front of me.
Oh,
I
it's
can
fine, I
send you a
just wasn't
status
sure if
report.
it's as easy as
There are a whole
just.
lot, there's multiple red highest ranking properties on the list that have not been designated for one reason or another, and a couple of them that I sent an email out, I don't know, pretty late this morning, with a couple of them, and both of those were rated red, the highest ranking, and the owners have changed.
So do you
And
just start
we've
the
already,
highest?
as a group, had found those properties to be important and designatable. And we need to just figure out a process. The one property that I sent out, Chuck had done the research on. But again, all 3 of those properties have new owners, and we haven't talked to the new owners, even though I can't remember where that one is, but the 2 that I had researched were on the list of red, important properties. And before, we had decided to approach the owner, but we did back off per Dave, hoping that we could have more conversation and change their minds, and now we have a brand-new person that we may be able to discuss that with. But without talking about, without going through a presentation or going through an inventory form on that property, you have nothing to go on to say, that's the right one to go for. Let's work on that one. But without even, without discussing it, presenting it to you, you know,
I-
you can't do it via email because that's not public, so.
Well, so maybe next month, you know, we'll have the 3 properties you talked about, and other properties, we'll bring it to the table, and we'll pick a few. I would suggest that probably if anyone here who's gone through the whole inventory form, done all the history, the research and everything, and decides to bring it to the table, it's probably of enough value, I would think that. But, so we could do that next time. We can bring them to the table and have a larger conversation. Is
Some of
that?
the properties that were highly rated in 2014 have changed. So there is something to discuss about whether they're still valid.
Okay.
You know, I may like the property and several
Okay.
of you may not think it's suitable. So, but just quickly, what we did before, and again, we need to figure out if this is the right way to do it or not. This is a new group and new world we're in. We would each tell, you know, we decide which ones we wanted to work on and then bring it to the group, the research, the whys. It was important property. And then the group would decide whether we should pursue it. And then the chair would write a letter to that person, that owner, and we would indicate that one of the commission would call and discuss the proposed designation. And Laura is witness, and the next step would be, once we've had that conversation, to meet with the homeowner, maybe take a tour of the house, et cetera, and get their reaction. In many cases, we have backed off because they had concerns that we could not, did not want to push them. The property wasn't in risk of being demolished or anything. So we have basically put those properties on hold. And two of the properties that I did, that I sent out earlier, were put on hold because the owners were not interested in having it done. Per law, we can go ahead, and we have in several cases, but only when the property, we felt that was our decision as a group. We felt a property was at risk, and we went forward with a designation on many occasions. And, it's harder when you don't have the owner happy about it. Often the homeowner can give you a lot more information about the background of the house too, which is really fun to do. And you even get a tour inside sometimes. So anyway, that's a process we've used before. We sent the letter out, we called that owner, tried to visit, to discuss the pros and cons and their concerns. And if it was a go-ahead, then the second presentation would be given to the group, and we would decide to designate or not.
Thank you. Yes. So if there's nothing else, can we have a motion to adjourn? A second? All in favor?
Oh, wait,
Oh.
let me open it back up.
Oh,
We have to talk about when our next meeting will be.
oh, right.
So
Okay.
a village board work session has been scheduled for our regular meeting on October 3rd. Typically, what we've done is move it to the following Thursday. I don't know how that works for everyone.
Fine with me.
That's the 10th.
Yes.
That should work for me.
It's okay for me. It's
4 of us definitely can do it. So the 10th sounds good.
Okay,
Hopefully Chuck can,
and we'll do it at 6 o'clock. Okay. Now you can go back to what you were doing.
So we were up to, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.